The chandelier crystals caught the late afternoon sun as I pushed through the double doors of the Grandview estate. $1,400 per guest, according to the invoice I'd seen accidentally forwarded to my email 3 months ago. The kind of venue where they don't list prices on the website because if you have to ask, you can't afford it. The string quartet stopped mid-note. 250 faces turned toward me like synchronized swimmers. My daughter's face drained of color so quickly I thought she might faint. Her future mother-in-law clutched her pearls. Actually clutched them, like something out of a Victorian novel. The groom's father stood abruptly, his chair scraping against marble floors that probably cost more than my annual salary. I wasn't alone, and the man standing beside me was the one person my daughter had prayed would never, ever show up to this wedding. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this really started, the day my daughter told me I wasn't good enough to watch her get married. 6 months earlier, I was in my workshop fixing a 1967 Mustang when my phone buzzed. My daughter Sarah's name lit up the screen. We'd been texting back and forth about wedding plans for weeks. Color schemes, flower arrangements, seating charts, menu selections. The usual things I pretended to understand because they mattered to her. I'd spent hours looking at fabric swatches trying to understand the difference between ivory and cream, between champagne and gold. They all looked the same to me, but Sarah could see nuances I couldn't, and I wanted to be part of her joy. The Mustang I was working on was a project car, a complete restoration from frame-up. The previous owner had let it sit in a barn for 20 years. When I bought it, the floor pans were rusted through, the engine was seized, and there were mice nests in the air cleaner. But underneath all that neglect was a beautiful machine, and I could see its potential. That's what I did. I saw potential in broken things, and I fixed them. It was more than a hobby, it was who I was. Dad, can we talk? The message read. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. Something about those 4 words made my stomach tighten. In my experience, can we talk? Was never followed by good news. It was the prelude to disappointment, to requests you didn't want to fulfill, to conversations you didn't want to have. I wiped grease from my hands on a shop rag, the same rag I'd been using for 10 years, worn soft with use, stained with the history of 1,000 repair jobs. I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring, and I could hear that particular tension in her voice that I'd learned to recognize over 24 years of being her father. The tone that meant she was about to ask for something she already knew I wouldn't like. It was the same tone she'd used when she was 16 and wanted to go to a concert 3 hours away with friends I'd never met. The same tone when she was 18 and announced she wasn't going to the state university on scholarship but wanted to go to a private college that cost 3 times as much. The same tone when she'd introduced me to Marcus for the first time, and I could tell she was holding her breath, waiting for my approval of this man she'd chosen. Hey, sweetheart, what's up? So, Dad, I've been talking with Marcus's parents. She paused. Marcus, the groom, 26 years old, tech entrepreneur, trust fund, degree from Princeton, or so everyone believed. Everything I wasn't. Everything I'd never be. They're really excited about the wedding, and they've been so generous with helping us plan everything. I could hear it in her voice, the way she talked about Marcus's parents with a reverence I'd never heard her use for me and Rebecca. The Hendricks family, old money from Connecticut, the kind of people who summered in the Hamptons and had standing reservations at restaurants where entrees cost more than my weekly grocery budget, the kind of people who made you feel small just by existing in their orbit. That's nice of them. I waited. There was more coming. There was always more coming. The thing is, they have a very specific vision for the day. It's going to be photographed for a magazine spread. Martha Stewart Weddings reached out to us because Marcus's mom knows someone on the editorial board. Can you believe it? Martha Stewart Weddings. How many people can say they had their wedding in Martha Stewart Weddings? Her excitement was palpable, almost manic. This was what mattered to her now. Not the commitment, not the vows, not the joining of 2 lives, but the performance of it all. The production value. The social currency of being featured in the right magazine, photographed at the right venue, wearing the right dress from the right designer. Sounds fancy, I said, feeling the first whisper of unease crawl up my spine like a warning. It is. But Dad, here's the thing. Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear her breathing, could almost see her pacing in whatever expensive apartment Marcus's parents had helped them rent in the city. The aesthetic they're going for is very curated. Everything has to match perfectly. The colors, the style, the overall vibe. It's like a Hollywood production. Every detail has been planned down to the last napkin fold. The wedding planner they hired costs more than most people's entire weddings. This has to be absolutely perfect. Aesthetic, that word again. Sarah had been using it constantly for the past 6 months. Everything was about the aesthetic. Her Instagram feed had to have the right aesthetic. Her apartment had to have the right aesthetic. Her career choices had to project the right aesthetic. I didn't even know what the word meant anymore. It seemed to mean whatever allowed her to justify decisions that made her uncomfortable. I set down my wrench carefully, deliberately, buying myself a moment to prepare for whatever was coming next. Sarah, just say what you need to say. Your suit doesn't really fit the color scheme they've chosen. And I know you don't like shopping, and I know you think spending money on clothes is wasteful, but this is important to them, to us. And I was thinking maybe it would be less stressful for everyone if we kept the guest list to people who already have the right attire. The words hung in the air between us like smoke after a fire. Dense, suffocating, impossible to ignore. I counted to 5 before responding, each number a beat of my heart, each heartbeat a reminder that this was my daughter saying these words. My daughter. The little girl I'd taught to ride a bike. The teenager I'd stayed up with when she had nightmares. The young woman I'd driven to college with a car full of belongings and a heart full of pride. You're uninviting me to your wedding because my suit isn't fancy enough? It's not just that, Dad. It's Marcus's family has been paying for everything. The venue costs $40,000 just to rent for the day. The flowers alone are $30,000. The dress? You don't even want to know what the dress costs. They've spent over $200,000 on this wedding. $200,000, Dad. That's more than you make in 3 years. They just want it to be perfect, and with the magazine photos and everything, we need everyone to look a certain way. Every groomsman's tuxedo was custom tailored. Every bridesmaid's dress was fitted 4 times. The mother's dresses had to be approved by the wedding planner. This isn't just a wedding, it's a statement, and we can't have anything that doesn't fit. It's not personal. Not personal. Those 2 words did more damage than anything else she could have said. They were the epitome of cruelty disguised as consideration. They were the knife wrapped in silk. They were my daughter telling me I wasn't good enough while pretending it wasn't an insult. I see. My voice came out flat. And what does your mother think about this? Mom understands. She knows how important this day is to me. To us. Marcus's family is really well connected, Dad. This wedding could open doors for his business, for our future. We can't mess it up. I looked around my workshop, at the tools I'd collected over 30 years of working with my hands. Each tool had a story. The Torque wrench I'd bought with my first paycheck from the garage where I'd started as an apprentice at 18. The socket set Rebecca had given me for our 5th anniversary because she knew I'd been eyeing it for months but wouldn't spend the money on myself. The rolling toolbox that Sarah had helped me pick out when she was 12, insisting I needed something with more drawers even though I'd said my old one was fine. Every tool in this shop represented a memory, a moment, a piece of who I was. I'd taught Sarah how to change a tire in this garage when she was 15, how to check her oil, check her tire pressure, identify strange sounds that meant something was wrong under the hood, how to be independent and never rely on anyone to take care of her car, because that's how people take advantage of you, how they make you dependent, how they control you. I'd taught her to be self-sufficient, to value substance over appearance, to measure people by their character, not their bank accounts, or at least I'd tried to teach her those things. Somewhere along the way, the lessons hadn't stuck. The Mustang sat on jack stands, half restored, waiting for me to care again. I'd been working on it for 8 months. Every weekend, every evening I could spare, I'd been bringing this car back to life. The floor pans had been replaced, the suspension rebuilt, the engine torn down and reconstructed with new gaskets, new seals, every component cleaned and inspected. I'd done it all myself, refusing to take shortcuts, refusing to compromise on quality even though it would have been faster and easier. That's what you did with things you loved. You put in the time, you did it right. You didn't care what it looked like to other people. You cared about making it work, making it last, making it true to what it was supposed to be. But all I could think about was the little girl who used to sit on my shoulders at the park, who called me her hero, who promised she'd always be my baby girl, the little girl who would run to meet me when I came home from work, who wanted nothing more than to tell me about her day and have me listen, the little girl who thought I hung the moon and stars. That night, my wife Rebecca came into the bedroom with that look on her face, the one that meant she was going to defend something indefensible. "Don't," I said before she could start. "Tom, she's under a lot of pressure. Marcus's family is... I know who they are. I know what they are." I turned to face her. "And apparently I know what we are. Not good enough. It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Rebecca?" Explain to me how our daughter uninviting me to her wedding because I don't match the aesthetic is anything other than her being ashamed of where she comes from. Rebecca sat on the edge of the bed. She's 24. She's in love. She's trying to fit into a new world. We have to let her make these choices. Even when those choices mean pretending we don't exist? It's just one day. Those words again, just one day. As if the most important day of my daughter's life was just another Tuesday. As if being excluded from walking her down the aisle, from giving a toast, from dancing with her one last time as my little girl meant nothing. Fine, I said. Let her have her perfect day. But I was lying. I wasn't fine, and I had no intention of letting this go. I need to tell you about Daniel Reeves. You might know him now. He's been featured in Forbes, TechCrunch, Entrepreneur Magazine, and all the major business publications. 32 years old, founder and CEO of Apex Solutions, a cybersecurity firm worth somewhere north of $300 million. He's spoken at conferences around the world. He's been called a visionary, a disruptor, the future of digital security. Tech blogs write breathless articles about his innovative approach to data protection. Investors line up for the chance to be associated with his next venture. But 12 years ago, Daniel Reeves was a 20-year-old kid with a brilliant mind, a tragic backstory, and absolutely no opportunities. No connections, no safety net, no family money to fall back on, just raw intelligence and a desperate hunger to prove himself. I met him on a Tuesday in March. I remember it was March because we just had that late-season snowstorm that knocked out power for half the city. His beat-up 1998 Honda Civic, faded blue paint, more rust than metal on the wheel wells, a passenger door that didn't match the rest of the car, broke down right outside my shop. He pushed it into my parking lot, which was impressive considering the uphill grade of the entrance. The kid was exhausted, sweating despite the cold, apologizing profusely for blocking my driveway. "I'm so sorry, sir. My car just died. I don't have money for a tow truck, but I promise I'll get it moved as soon as I can figure something out. Please don't call the police. I just need a few hours too." "What's wrong with it?" I interrupted. He looked surprised that I'd asked. "Fuel pump, I think. It's been making a whining noise for a few weeks, and this morning it just wouldn't start. I checked the spark plugs, the battery connections, the fuses. Everything else seems fine, so it's probably the fuel pump. But I can't afford to replace it right now. I've been working double shifts to save up for community college tuition, and He stopped, realizing he was oversharing with a stranger. When I asked him to describe the noise, he mimicked it perfectly. The high-pitched whine of a failing fuel pump, the hesitation in acceleration, the eventual loss of pressure. He diagnosed the problem faster and more accurately than most mechanics I knew. Faster than some mechanics I'd employed over the years. "You know cars," I said. It wasn't a question. "My dad taught me, before he died." His voice went flat on that last part, the way voices do when you're discussing old trauma that hasn't healed. He was a mechanic, had his own shop in Michigan. He used to say that understanding how machines work teaches you how everything works. Systems, cause, and effect, the importance of maintenance. I was going to be a mechanical engineer, had a full scholarship to University of Michigan and everything. But then he got sick. Cancer, stage 4. He fought it for 8 months, and I took care of him because we didn't have anyone else. My mom left when I was a kid. No siblings, no extended family, just us. He paused, looking at the ground. He died my freshman year of college, right before finals. I couldn't handle school after that. Failed all my classes, lost the scholarship, dropped out. I've been working whatever jobs I can find ever since, trying to save up enough to go back to school, but it's hard. Every time I get close to having enough saved, something happens. Medical bills from his treatment, debt collectors, life. There was something in his eyes when he talked, a combination of intelligence, determination, and barely suppressed desperation. The look of someone who knew they were capable of great things but couldn't catch a break. The look of someone who was tired of being kicked by a world that didn't care. I hired him that day, didn't even think twice about it, paid him under the table at first because he needed money immediately and couldn't wait 2 weeks for official payroll to process. He worked in my shop for 2 years while going to community college at night, studying computer science instead of mechanical engineering. He'd realized that the future was in technology, not in fixing cars, but he used the same systematic thinking his father had taught him. The kid had something special, a way of seeing patterns that most people missed. He could look at a complex system and immediately understand how all the pieces fit together, where the weaknesses were, where things would break down. It was uncanny. He applied it to car engines at first, then to computer networks, then to security protocols. His mind worked in layers, seeing not just what was in front of him, but what could go wrong 3 steps down the line. He was also one of the hardest workers I'd ever met. He'd show up early, stay late, volunteer for the jobs nobody else wanted. He cleaned the shop without being asked. He organized inventory systems that made the whole operation more efficient. He built a website for my business, this was 2013, and I didn't even have a website yet, that actually brought in new customers. More than that, though, he was hungry. Not physically, though I suspected he skipped meals sometimes to save money. Hungry for knowledge, for opportunity, for a chance to prove that he was more than his circumstances. When he came to me with his idea for a cybersecurity startup 3 years after I'd hired him, I listened. Really listened. He explained how most cybersecurity firms were reactive. They built defenses and then fixed them when they got breached. He wanted to build something proactive, something that anticipated attacks before they happened by modeling hacker behavior and predicting vulnerabilities. It was brilliant. Complex, yes. Risky, absolutely. But brilliant. When he showed me his business plan, 60 pages of market analysis, technical specifications, financial projections, I was impressed. This wasn't some half-baked idea scribbled on a napkin. This was serious, professional, the kind of plan that venture capitalists would actually read. But venture capitalists weren't reading it. He'd sent it to 27 firms. All 27 had rejected him. Too young, too inexperienced, no track record, no connections, no prestigious university on his resume. Community college didn't count, apparently. The same story every time. I just need someone to believe in me, he said. Someone to give me a shot. That's all I need. One shot. When he asked if I knew anyone who might invest, I said yes. Me. I told him I would invest in his company. He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Tom, you can't... I appreciate the thought, but this isn't a small investment. I need at least $30,000 to get started. That's not the kind of money that... I have it, I said. I've been saving for a new truck, but trucks can wait. Good ideas can't. $30,000. It represented 5 years of careful budgeting and weekend overtime. It was every extra shift I'd taken, every luxury I'd skipped, every vacation Rebecca and I had postponed. It was supposed to buy me a new F-150 with all the options I'd always wanted. Instead, I gave it to a 23-year-old kid with a computer science degree from community college and a dream. Rebecca thought I was crazy. Tom, we don't know if this will work. We don't know if he can actually build what he's talking about. $30,000 is our safety net. What if something goes wrong? Then something goes wrong, I said. But Rebecca, this kid, he's got something. I can feel it. And if we don't help him, nobody will. He'll end up working minimum wage jobs for the rest of his life, and that brain of his will go to waste. I can't let that happen. You barely know him. I know enough. She was right to be skeptical. The statistics on startup success were brutal. Most failed within the first year. Even more failed within 5 years. Investing in a startup was basically lighting your money on fire and hoping something valuable emerged from the ashes. But I'd built my entire life on calculated risks, on seeing potential where others saw problems, on betting on people rather than certainties. The investment paid off. Not immediately, it never does. Daniel spent the first year building the product, living on instant noodles and sleeping on an air mattress in a tiny apartment he shared with 2 roommates. He worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week. He taught himself advanced programming languages. He networked at every tech event he could crash. He pitched his product to anyone who would listen. The breakthrough came at a hacker conference in Las Vegas. Daniel demonstrated his security system by predicting and preventing a live hack attempt on a Fortune 500 company's network. The demo went viral. Tech blogs covered it. Investors who'd rejected him suddenly returned his calls. Within 6 months, he'd secured $2 million in venture funding. Within a year, he had contracts with major corporations. Within 5 years, Apex Solutions was valued at over $300 million. He paid me back 10 times over, a $300,000 return on my $30,000 investment. But more than that, he stayed in touch. He never forgot where he came from or who'd given him his start when nobody else would. He called me every few months just to talk. Sent gifts at Christmas, usually car-related because he remembered where we'd met. Invited me to his company events. Introduced me as the man who believed in me when nobody else did. He always said I was the closest thing to a father he'd had since losing his own dad. And when he heard about Sarah's wedding, about how she'd uninvited me because I didn't fit the aesthetic, he was furious. That's not okay, Tom. You don't treat family like that. You don't throw away the people who raised you because they don't match your new friend's standards. She's young, I said, making excuses even though I knew they were weak. She's in love. She's not thinking clearly. Or she's thinking perfectly clearly, and she's made a choice to value appearance over substance. Either way, it's wrong. 3 days after Sarah uninvited me, Daniel called with information that would change everything. Tom, I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. Tom, I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. I was in the garage again. Seemed like I spent all my time there lately. Go ahead. I've been doing some work in the tech startup scene in Silicon Valley, networking, meeting other founders, that kind of thing, and I ran into someone who knows your future son-in-law, Marcus Hendricks. Something in Daniel's voice made me set down my tools. Okay. We used to be business partners, briefly, about 3 years ago before my company really took off. Marcus approached me with an investment opportunity, said he was starting a tech venture and wanted partners. I looked into it, and Tom, something wasn't right. The numbers didn't add up, the business model was shaky, and when I dug deeper, I found out he'd misrepresented his credentials to potential investors. What do you mean? He claimed he had a degree from Princeton. He doesn't. He attended for 1 semester and dropped out, but he's been telling everyone he graduated. That's just the surface level. When I confronted him about the lies, he tried to turn it around on me, said I was just jealous, that I didn't understand his vision. We parted ways badly. My grip tightened on the phone. What else? I let it go after that. Figured it was his problem, not mine. But Tom, if he's marrying your daughter, you should know that this guy has a pattern. I kept tabs on him loosely through mutual connections. He's been engaged twice before. Both times, the engagements fell apart after the women's families discovered financial irregularities. He dates women from wealthy families. It's a pattern. The workshop suddenly felt very cold. You're saying he's a con artist. I'm saying he's a liar who targets wealthy families, and I don't know what his endgame is, but your daughter is about to marry him, and you should know the truth. After I hung up with Daniel, I sat in the darkness of my workshop for hours. The motion sensor lights had clicked off long ago, leaving me in shadows, broken only by the streetlight filtering through the high windows. Part of me wanted to call Sarah immediately, to warn her, to protect her the way I'd protected her from everything else in life, from bullies at school, from boys who didn't respect her, from mistakes that could derail her future. But I knew what would happen if I called. She'd accuse me of being jealous, of trying to sabotage her happiness because I was bitter about being excluded from the wedding, of making things up because I couldn't accept that she was moving into a world I didn't understand. Rebecca would probably side with her. She'd been doing that a lot lately, choosing peace over truth, avoiding conflict rather than confronting uncomfortable realities. I'd become the villain in their story, the overprotective father who couldn't let go, the blue-collar mechanic who resented his daughter's success and upward mobility, the old man clinging to the past while she embraced the future. So I did something else, something more methodical, more careful. I started investigating Marcus Hendricks myself. The internet is a beautiful, terrible thing when you know how to use it. People leave digital footprints everywhere. Social media posts, public records, business registrations, court documents, property records. Most people don't even realize how much information about their lives is publicly accessible if you know where to look and have the patience to dig. With Daniel's help, I started building a profile of Marcus Hendricks. Not the glossy, curated version he presented to the world, but the real one, the one he tried to hide. The fake degree was easy to verify. Daniel had already done that legwork, but I wanted to see it for myself, wanted to eliminate any possibility of error. I called Princeton's registrar office, pretending to be a potential employer conducting a background check. They were professional, polite, and absolutely clear. Marcus Hendricks had attended Princeton University for 1 semester in the fall of 2019. He'd withdrawn in January 2020 due to academic difficulties. He had never graduated. He had never even come close to graduating. But his LinkedIn profile claimed he'd graduated magna cum laude in 2020 with a degree in computer science and economics. His company bio said the same thing. He'd told Sarah's parents he was a Princeton graduate. He'd probably told everyone he'd ever met. It wasn't a small lie or a harmless exaggeration. It was systematic fraud, repeated so often that maybe even Marcus believed it himself. The failed engagements were harder to document. People don't exactly advertise broken relationships on the public record, but social media left traces if you knew how to find them. Facebook photos that had been deleted but still showed up in tagged collections from friends, Instagram stories that had expired but left comments from people asking about wedding plans that never materialized, registry lists from Bloomingdale's and Pottery Barn that had been created and then canceled. I found Madison Brooks first. She'd been engaged to Marcus in 2022. Her father owned a chain of luxury car dealerships across the Northeast. The engagement lasted 4 months before her family discovered Marcus had been using her father's business connections to try to secure loans for a startup that didn't exist. They'd threatened legal action. The engagement ended abruptly. Madison had moved to California shortly after, probably trying to escape the embarrassment. Then I found Emily Thornton, engaged to Marcus in 2021. Her family owned commercial real estate in Manhattan, actual Manhattan, not some suburb claiming proximity to the city. The engagement lasted 6 months before Emily discovered Marcus had been lying about his employment history and his net worth. He'd claimed to be a partner in a venture capital firm. He was actually an unpaid intern who'd been asked to leave after 3 months for ethical violations. The pattern was clear. Marcus targeted wealthy women. He presented himself as an equal, educated, successful, connected. He charmed them, charmed their families. He got engaged quickly, before anyone could dig too deep. And then he found ways to access their family's money, resources, or connections. When he got caught, he moved on to the next target. Sarah was just the latest mark, and this time, he'd gotten further than ever before. He'd actually made it to the wedding. Her parents had already spent $200,000. They were talking about investing in his startup. They'd offered to help him buy a house after the wedding. They were all in, completely sold on the fiction Marcus had created. Then I found the girlfriend. Her name was Jessica Torres, and she lived in San Diego. She was 31, a successful real estate agent specializing in luxury properties. Her Instagram was public, a common mistake people make when they want to show off their lifestyle, but don't think about who might be watching. The photos told a complete story. There was Marcus at an expensive restaurant in La Jolla, his arm around Jessica, both of them laughing at something off camera. Timestamp. 3 months ago, the same weekend he'd told Sarah he was attending a tech conference in San Francisco. Marcus and Jessica on a beach at sunset, kissing. Timestamp. 6 weeks ago, the same day Sarah had posted about being so grateful for my amazing fiancé who supports my dreams even when he's traveling for work. Marcus in Jessica's apartment, I recognized it from other photos, sprawled on her couch, clearly comfortable, clearly a regular presence there. Timestamp, 2 months ago. The most damning photo was from 3 weeks ago. Marcus and Jessica in bed together, a selfie capturing their faces close together, both smiling, clearly intimate. The caption, 8 months with this one and still feels like magic. Blessed relationship goals, my forever. 8 months. Marcus had been seeing Jessica for the entire length of his engagement to Sarah. While he was planning a wedding with my daughter, picking out flowers and tasting cakes and pretending to build a future, he was simultaneously maintaining a full relationship with someone else 3,000 miles away. I felt sick. Physically, actually sick. My daughter was being played by a professional sociopath, and she'd pushed away everyone who might have warned her because they didn't match her new aesthetic. But I had evidence now. Real, documented, undeniable evidence. Screenshots of every damning photo, copies of the engagement records from his previous relationships, documentation of his fake credentials, everything organized in a folder that would make the truth impossible to dismiss. I called Daniel back, my hand shaking as I dialed. I need a favor, a big one. Name it. That wedding my daughter uninvited me to? The one where I'm not good enough to watch her get married? I need you to come with me? There was a pause. Tom, are you sure? If we do this publicly at the wedding itself, it's going to be messy. Really messy. There will be fallout, social consequences. Sarah might not forgive you for a long time. I know. But Daniel, what's the alternative? I let her marry this man. I let her tie her life to a con artist who's already planning how to steal from her family. I let her find out 6 months or a year from now when he's already done the damage. My voice broke. She's my daughter. I have to protect her, even if she hates me for it. Okay, Daniel said quietly. Okay, I'll be there. We'll do this together. Thank you. Tom? For what it's worth, you're doing the right thing. It doesn't feel like it right now, but you are. Your daughter is lucky to have a father who loves her enough to be the bad guy when necessary. I wasn't sure about that, but I was sure that letting Marcus Hendricks marry my daughter without exposing the truth would be something I'd regret for the rest of my life, even if the truth destroyed everything, even if Sarah never forgave me. Some truths are worth more than forgiveness. The morning of the wedding, I woke up at 5 a.m., unable to sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios, imagining how it would go. Rebecca was asleep beside me, her breathing steady and peaceful. I hadn't told her what I was planning. If I had, she would have tried to stop me. Or worse, she would have told Sarah, and then there would have been no chance to reveal the truth. Sometimes love requires deception, small lies in service of larger truths. I told myself that as I got dressed in the darkness, as I left the house before Rebecca could ask where I was going, as I drove to pick up Daniel with evidence of my daughter's fiancé's betrayal sitting in a folder on my passenger seat. I told myself I was doing the right thing. I told myself she'd understand eventually. I told myself a lot of things that morning that I didn't quite believe. The morning of the wedding, I dressed carefully. Not in the suit Sarah deemed unacceptable, but in the nicest thing I owned, a charcoal gray three-piece I'd bought for my own father's funeral 15 years ago. It wasn't designer. The label wasn't Italian. But it was clean, pressed, and dignified. Daniel wore something similar. "You ready for this?" he asked as we drove toward the Grandview estate. "No, but we're doing it anyway." The venue was exactly as ridiculous as I'd imagined. White marble columns, a circular driveway with a fountain, manicured gardens that probably required a full-time staff. Valets in white gloves rushed to park cars. Women in designer dresses and men in custom tuxedos moved through the entrance like they were attending a royal coronation. We parked on the street and walked in. The ceremony had already started. Through the glass doors, I could see the wedding party arranged on a raised platform, Sarah in a dress that probably cost more than my car, Marcus beside her looking every inch the successful young entrepreneur. The officiant was mid-sentence when we pushed through the doors. The music stopped. It wasn't dramatic. No record scratch, no sudden silence. The quartet simply stopped playing, the way you stop breathing when you see something that doesn't belong. The officiant's voice trailed off. 250 heads turned in perfect unison. Sarah's face went from radiant bride to horrified daughter in the space of a heartbeat. Her bouquet dipped in her hand. Marcus's perfect smile froze, then cracked when he saw Daniel standing beside me. "Tom!" Rebecca's voice cut across the silence. She rushed toward us, heels clicking on marble, her face a mask of panic and fury. "What are you doing here? You can't. This isn't." "I'm here to watch my daughter get married," I said calmly, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Unless there's a reason I shouldn't be." Marcus's mother stood abruptly. "This is a private event. Security." But before anyone could move, Daniel stepped forward. He had a way of commanding attention, something about the confidence that comes from success, from knowing you belong anywhere you choose to stand. "Mrs. Hendricks, I apologize for the interruption. My name is Daniel Reeves. I'm a friend of the bride's father and coincidentally a former business associate of the groom." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Marcus, it's been a while. I wasn't sure you'd remember me." Marcus had gone pale. "Daniel, this is my wedding. This isn't the time." "Actually," Daniel said, his voice carrying across the silent room, "I think this is exactly the time. You see, before Sarah commits to spending her life with you, there are some things she should know, things you've been hiding." The whispers started like rustling leaves. Guests pulled out phones. A few people stood for a better view. This was better than any reality TV show, more dramatic than any scripted scene. This was real life falling apart in real time. Sarah found her voice. "Dad, what is this? What are you doing?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She was beautiful, terrified, confused, but beautiful. And in that moment, I saw the little girl who'd trusted me to keep her safe, who'd believed I'd always protect her. "I'm being your father," I said, "even when you don't want me to be." Daniel pulled a folder from inside his jacket. In the age of smartphones and tablets, there was something powerfully analog about physical documents, something official, undeniable. Marcus and I were business partners 3 years ago, briefly. Daniel's voice remained calm, almost conversational, but it filled every corner of that vast room. He approached me with an investment opportunity. His credentials were impressive, or so I thought. Princeton graduate, successful startup experience, connections in Silicon Valley. But when I started doing due diligence, I discovered something interesting. He opened the folder, pulled out a document. "This is from Princeton University's registrar office. Marcus Hendricks attended Princeton for 1 semester in 2019. He withdrew due to academic difficulties. He never graduated." Daniel held up the paper. "Yet he's been telling investors, and apparently his fiancé's family, that he has a degree from Princeton. That's called fraud." Marcus's father stood. "This is ridiculous. Marcus, tell them." "There's more," Daniel continued. "After we parted ways, I kept loose tabs on Marcus through mutual connections in the tech world. Call it curiosity. And I noticed a pattern. Marcus has been engaged 3 times in the past 4 years, each time to women from wealthy families. Each time, the engagement ended abruptly after the family discovered financial irregularities or other concerning behavior." Sarah's hand went to her mouth. The bouquet fell, white roses scattering across the marble platform. That's a lie, Marcus's voice cracked. This man is he's bitter because I didn't want to work with him. He's trying to sabotage my life. Then explain this. Daniel pulled out his phone, projected an image onto his screen for those closest to see. This is Jessica Torres. She's a real estate agent in San Diego, and according to her very public social media accounts, she's been in a relationship with you for the past 8 months. The same 8 months you've been engaged to Sarah. The gasps were audible now. Someone near the back shouted, I knew it! A bridesmaid started crying. Marcus's mother sank into her chair like she'd been shot. Show me. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Daniel approached the platform, handed her his phone. I watched my daughter's face as she scrolled through images. Marcus, with another woman at dinner, on a beach, in bed. Each photo was time-stamped, location-tagged, undeniable. Sarah, I can explain. Marcus reached for her. Don't touch me. Her voice was ice. Don't you dare touch me. This is all a misunderstanding. That woman, we're just friends. The photos are taken out of context. And the Princeton thing, that's just a technicality. I did the work. I learned everything. The degree is just a piece of paper. Stop talking. Sarah looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. Just stop talking. But Daniel wasn't finished. There's one more thing. Marcus's successful startup that he's been telling everyone about. It doesn't exist. I had a friend do a corporate record search. There's no registered business, no LLC, no incorporation papers. The office he claims to go to every day, it's a WeWork space he rents by the day. The investors he's been meeting with, they don't exist. Marcus's father finally spoke. Son, is this true? The silence that followed was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. Marcus looked around the room, at his parents, at Sarah, at the 250 witnesses to his exposure, and something in him seemed to break. His shoulders sagged. His perfect posture collapsed. I was going to make it real, he said quietly. The business, the success. I just needed time. I needed capital to get started. Sarah's family, they were going to invest. After the wedding, it was all going to work out. Sarah's mother let out a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. You were using her for money. I love her. Marcus's voice rose desperately. I do love her. But yes, okay, I needed the investment. My parents cut me off 2 years ago when they found out I'd been lying about Princeton. I've been living off credit cards and loans, and I'm $200,000 in debt. This wedding alone cost... He stopped, realized what he was admitting. My parents paid for this wedding, Sarah said slowly. $200,000. And you were going to use it... What? As seed money for a fake company? It's not fake. It's just not started yet. But it will be. I have ideas, real ideas. I just needed... Security. Marcus's father's voice boomed across the room. Get him out of here. 2 men in dark suits materialized from the edges of the room. Marcus tried to back away, still pleading, still explaining, but they took his arms with professional efficiency. Sarah, please, I love you. We can fix this. I can explain everything. Get him out, Sarah repeated, her voice stronger now. Get him out of my sight. They dragged him through the side exit. The girlfriend revelation, the fake degree, the non-existent business, each piece of information had been damaging. But that final admission, that he'd seen her family as nothing more than an ATM machine, that was the killing blow. The room erupted in conversation. Guests stood, pulled out phones, surrounded Sarah's parents with questions and condolences. The wedding planner stood frozen with her clipboard, probably calculating how many deposits were now forfeit. The photographer snapped pictures frantically. This would definitely make it into Martha Stewart weddings, just not the way anyone had planned. I stood at the back of it all, watching the chaos I'd created, feeling the weight of what I'd just done to my daughter, because yes, I'd exposed a con artist. Yes, I'd saved her from a terrible marriage. But I'd also destroyed her wedding day, humiliated her in front of everyone she knew, shattered whatever future she'd been dreaming of. Rebecca found me in the chaos. Tears streamed down her face, smearing her careful makeup. Tom, oh my God. When did you... Does it matter? You saved her. He was going to ruin her life, and you saved her. But when I looked at Sarah, collapsed in a chair, surrounded by her bridesmaids, still in that expensive white dress, looking more lost than I'd ever seen her, I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like the villain in her story, the father who'd crashed her perfect day and torn it all apart, even if I'd done it to save her. The venue cleared quickly after that. Guests gathered their things and left in clusters, already composing texts and social media posts about the most dramatic wedding that never was. The catering staff packed up untouched food, the string quartet loaded their instruments, The wedding planner spoke urgently into her phone about cancellation clauses and vendor contracts. I stood in the empty main room, looking at the decorations that had cost more than my annual salary. White roses by the thousand, crystal chandeliers, silk chair covers. All of it meaningless now. All of it just expensive trash waiting to be cleaned up. Daniel appeared beside me. "You okay?" "Not really." "You did the right thing." "Did I? Look at her." Through the front doorway, I could see Sarah still in that white dress, mascara-stained tears on her face, surrounded by women trying to comfort her. "I destroyed her." "No. You saved her. Marcus destroyed himself. You just made sure she saw it before she legally bound herself to a con artist." "She's going to hate me for this." "Maybe." Daniel put a hand on my shoulder. "But she's going to be alive and free and not married to a man who saw her as a bank account. That's worth something." The Hendricks family left without a word to anyone. Marcus's father looked like he'd aged 10 years. His mother wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. I heard later that they paid the venue cancellation fee without complaint, probably relieved to avoid a lawsuit from Sarah's family. Rebecca stayed with Sarah, but she kept looking at me across the room with an expression I couldn't quite read. Gratitude? Anger? Both? An hour later, after most of the guests had left, Sarah's parents approached me. Her father, Marcus's father, God, I still thought of him that way, extended his hand. "Tom, I owe you an apology." I shook his hand warily. "For what?" "For not seeing what kind of man my daughter was marrying, for being so caught up in the prestige and the connections that I didn't do my own due diligence, and for—" He glanced at his wife. "For supporting the decision to exclude you from the wedding. That was wrong, terribly wrong." His wife, Catherine, looked like she'd been crying for hours. "We thought we were helping her, thought we were setting her up in a world that would give her opportunities. Instead, we almost helped her marry a criminal." "He's not a criminal," I said. "Just a liar and a user. There's a difference." "Is there?" Catherine laughed bitterly. "We spent $200,000 on a wedding to a man who planned to steal from us. If that's not criminal, I don't know what is." I didn't have an answer for that. Sarah appeared in the doorway. She'd changed out of the wedding dress into jeans and a sweater someone must have brought her. Without the dress, without the makeup, she looked young again, vulnerable. "Dad." Everyone else suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere. Her parents drifted toward the exit. Daniel went outside. Rebecca squeezed my hand once, then followed the others. Sarah and I stood alone in that vast, empty room with all its useless luxury. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm sorry I ruined your wedding. I'm sorry I embarrassed you. I'm sorry for all of it." "Are you sorry you told me the truth?" I thought about that. "No." She nodded slowly. "Good, because I'm not sorry you did it either." "You're not?" "I'm furious at you. I'm humiliated. I'm heartbroken. Everyone I know just watched my entire future fall apart in the most public way possible." She wiped her eyes. "But Dad, he was lying to me about everything, his degree, his business, his other girlfriend, and I was so caught up in being part of his world that I couldn't see it, or wouldn't. Oh, you're not stupid for not seeing it. He's good at what he does. Con artists are always charming." "But you saw it. You saw through him. Daniel saw it. I just listened to him." Sarah walked to one of the windows overlooking the gardens. "Do you know what the worst part is? Not that he lied, not even that he cheated. It's that I told you not to come to my wedding because you didn't fit the aesthetic. I told my own father, the man who raised me, who paid for my education, who taught me to be strong and independent. I told you that you weren't good enough to watch me get married. You were young, in love. People make mistakes. Stop making excuses for me." She turned to face me, and her eyes were fierce. "I was a terrible daughter. I was shallow and cruel, and I chose some fantasy version of a life over the people who actually loved me. And the worst part is, you saved me anyway. You came here when I told you not to. You exposed a man who was using me. You protected me even after I pushed you away." I crossed the room and pulled her into a hug. She resisted for a second, then collapsed against me, crying into my shoulder the way she'd done when she was little and the world had been too big and scary. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry." "I know, sweetheart. I know." We stood there for a long time, in that empty wedding venue, while she cried and I held her and tried to figure out how we'd rebuild from here. Eventually, Rebecca came back inside. "The venue manager says we need to clear out. They have another event tomorrow." Sarah pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Of course they do. Life goes on, right?" "It does," I said. "And you're going to be okay." "How do you know?" Because you're my daughter, and you're stronger than you think. We left the Grandview estate together, Sarah between me and Rebecca, her parents walking ahead with Daniel. The sun was setting, turning the sky orange and pink. The photographers who'd been hired to capture the perfect wedding were long gone. The only photos from today would be the ones guests had taken on their phones, documenting not a fairy tale beginning, but a necessary ending. The drive home was quiet. Sarah sat in the back seat, staring out the window. Rebecca held my hand across the center console, squeezing it occasionally like she was reassuring herself I was real. When we pulled into our driveway, our modest 3-bedroom suburban house that didn't have marble columns or fountain circles, Sarah finally spoke. "Can I stay here tonight? I don't want to go back to the apartment. Marcus has keys, and I can't face that yet." "Of course," Rebecca said immediately. "Your room is exactly how you left it." That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up around 2 in the morning and went down to the workshop. The Mustang still sat on its jack stands, waiting to be finished. I picked up my tools and got back to work. An hour later, I heard the door open. Sarah appeared in her pajamas, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Couldn't sleep either." "Not really." She handed me a mug and sat on my work stool. "What are you working on?" "Replacing the brake lines. Want to help?" "I don't know how." "I'll teach you." So that's what we did. At 2 in the morning, in my workshop, I taught my daughter how to properly install brake lines on a 1967 Mustang. She asked questions, I answered them. We worked side by side in comfortable silence, broken only by requests for tools or quiet conversation about technique. It wasn't dramatic. There were no apologies or grand declarations, just a father and daughter fixing something broken together. When the sun came up, Rebecca found us still in the garage, covered in grease, the brake line installation complete. "You two look terrible," she said, but she was smiling. "We fixed it," Sarah said proudly. "Look, Dad taught me how to—" "I don't understand a word of what you're saying, but I'm impressed anyway." Rebecca held up her phone. "Sarah, your friends have been texting. They want to know if you're okay." Sarah's face fell. "What do I even tell them? Thanks for coming to my wedding that wasn't a wedding because my fiancé was a con artist and my dad exposed him in front of everyone?" "You tell them the truth," I said. "You tell them you dodged a bullet and you're going to be fine." "Am I going to be fine?" "Eventually." She considered this. That's the most honest thing anyone said to me in months. The lawsuit came 3 months after the wedding that wasn't. Marcus's family sued Sarah's parents for defamation, claiming Daniel's public accusations had damaged Marcus's reputation and business prospects. Sarah's parents countersued for fraud and attempted theft. The whole thing settled out of court after Marcus's girlfriend, the one from San Diego, came forward with evidence that he'd also stolen money from her. Marcus disappeared after that. Last I heard, he'd moved to another state and was working sales somewhere. I didn't waste energy hating him. He was just a small man with big dreams and no conscience. The world is full of people like that. Sarah moved back home for a while. She quit her job. She'd been working at one of Marcus's father's companies, and that became awkward fast, and spent a few months figuring out what she actually wanted to do with her life, not what looked good on Instagram or impressed Marcus's family. She went back to school, got a degree in mechanical engineering. Turns out all those years of watching me work on cars had actually taught her something. She's good at it too. Started an internship at a local automotive design firm and loves the work. We rebuilt our relationship slowly. Some damage takes time to repair, like rust on a vintage car. You can't just paint over it. You have to cut out the corroded parts and replace them with something stronger. Daniel became a regular fixture at our family dinners. He and Sarah became friends, real friends, not the transactional kind she'd had in Marcus's world. He even invested in her career, connecting her with people in the automotive industry who could help her grow. Rebecca and I grew closer too. The wedding disaster forced us to confront some things we'd been avoiding, like how we'd enabled Sarah's worst impulses by not pushing back when she started valuing appearances over substance. We went to therapy, worked on communication, remembered why we'd fallen in love 40 years ago. As for me, I finished the Mustang. Sarah helped. We took it to a car show last month and won 3rd place in the restoration category. She cried when they announced it, not because of the trophy, but because of what it represented, something we'd built together, something real and honest and worth doing right. She's dating someone new now, a guy named Jason who works in her office. He's an engineer too, drives a 10-year-old Honda Civic and thinks fancy restaurants are a waste of money when you can cook better food at home. He came over for dinner last week and spent 2 hours in my workshop, asking questions about engine rebuilds and restoration techniques. "I like this one," I told Sarah later. "Me too," she said. But Dad, if we ever do get married, I need you to promise me something. What's that? Wear whatever suit you want. I don't care if it matches the aesthetic. I don't care if it's from a thrift store. I just want you there. Deal, I said. Looking back on that day at the Grandview estate, I still don't know if I did the right thing. I humiliated my daughter in front of everyone she knew. I destroyed what she thought was going to be the happiest day of her life. I became the villain in her story, at least temporarily. But I also saved her from a man who would have used her, stolen from her family, and eventually broken her heart in far worse ways. I showed her that love, real love, parental love, doesn't stop just because you push it away. It doesn't care about aesthetics or social status or whether it's invited to the party. Real love shows up anyway, even when it's not wanted, especially when it's not wanted. And sometimes, real love has to be the bad guy to protect the people it cares about. The room went silent that day. But silence isn't always bad. Sometimes silence is the space where truth can finally be heard, where lies fall apart, where people wake up and see what's really in front of them. Sarah sees me differently now, not as the embarrassing dad who doesn't fit the aesthetic, but as the father who loved her enough to risk her hatred to save her future. That's worth something. That's worth everything. She tells people the story sometimes, at parties or gatherings. My dad crashed my wedding, she says. Best thing he ever did. And when she says it, she's smiling. Not the practiced perfect smile she wore during the Marcus days, but the real one. The one I remember from when she was little, before she learned to be anyone other than herself. That's the thing about dramatic moments. They're only dramatic in the moment. Time passes, wounds heal, perspectives change. What seemed like the end of the world becomes just another story to tell, another lesson learned, another chapter in the complicated book of being human. I'm in my workshop now, starting a new project. A 1972 Chevelle, this time. Sarah's already claimed weekends to help. Jason wants to learn. Rebecca says we're turning the garage into some kind of automotive therapy center, and maybe she's right. Cars are honest. You put in the work, you get results, you cut corners, you pay for it later. You treat them right, they'll run for decades. It's simple cause and effect. No hidden agendas, no con artists pretending to be something they're not. Maybe that's why I've always loved restoration work. Taking something broken and making it whole again. It's not always pretty. Sometimes you have to tear everything apart before you can build it back up. Sometimes the damage is worse than you expected, and you have to replace more than you planned. But in the end, when the engine turns over and purrs like it did the day it rolled off the assembly line 50 years ago, all that work means something. You've created something real, something that will last. That's what I'm doing with Sarah. Restoration work. Taking our relationship apart, examining the damaged pieces, replacing what's broken, and building something stronger than before. It's slow work, careful work, the kind of work that doesn't show up in magazine spreads or get featured on social media. But it's real, and real is always worth more than perfect. The wedding they tried to hide from me ended up being the wedding that saved my daughter. Not from Marcus, though that too, but from a version of herself that valued appearance over truth, status over substance, perfection over authenticity. She's herself again now, maybe more herself than she's ever been. And when she does get married someday, if she gets married, I'll be there, in whatever suit I want, walking her down the aisle like I always dreamed I would. Not because it will look good in photos, not because it fits anyone's aesthetic, but because I'm her father, and she's my daughter, and some bonds are stronger than embarrassment or pride or the fear of not fitting in. Some bonds are strong enough to survive being tested, strong enough to show up uninvited to a wedding with the truth in your pocket and a friend by your side, strong enough to watch everything fall apart and know that it needed to fall apart so something better could be built in its place. The room went silent that day. But silence isn't the end of the story. It's just the space where the truth gets room to breathe. And sometimes the truth is exactly what everyone needed to hear, even if nobody wanted to listen, especially if nobody wanted to listen. That's what fathers do. We show up. We tell the truth. We protect our children even when they don't want to be protected. And we fix what's broken, one careful piece at a time, until it runs true again. Just like a 1967 Mustang with a rebuilt engine and new brake lines rolling down the highway on a summer afternoon, the wind in your hair and your daughter in the passenger seat, both of you going somewhere better than where you've been. That's the real ending to this story. Not the dramatic moment when the room went silent, and not the revelation or the canceled wedding or the lawsuit or any of it. The real ending is a father and daughter in a workshop, covered in grease, fixing something together, learning that the best things in life aren't perfect or polished or photographed for magazines. The best things in life are real, And real is messy and complicated and sometimes painful, but it's always, always worth it. Always.